I mean, what else do we want to talk about while we're in here? We've had a lot of reflections on...
There is always music to our ears.
That's true.
Yeah.
So this is something that Angles mentioned at some point, but I really like the idea of talking about it, which is particularly about video game OSTs that we are very fond of, because there are a lot, and I am one of those people who listens to video game music probably more than actual normal albums.
I mean, fair.
Like, I don't have a Spotify or anything like that. I just listen to video game soundtracks and, like, playlists and things like that.
All on burnt CDs.
Wow.
You've made yourself. You know, you've made the album art.
Honestly, no joke, I've legitimately considered doing that for, like, D&D playlists before.
Yeah, I know you've done that for D&D before.
I mean, honestly, as much as we like to say it's a bad game, a really good soundtrack is the... Yeah! God damn it! Why did I say it again?
Alright, well... This is the thing about that
Y2K has a good soundtrack.
There we go. That's, I think... Listen, mate, I know you wanted early access to the 1.5 update, but they did put that chip in you. They did the same...
Fucking DOD contracts.
They did the same to me, it's okay, but... yeah, the...
You weren't postmodern enough.
No.
You did not qualify for the postmodern.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately pre-modern.
Man.
Swinging 50s or some shit.
But the... I'm not sure if I would say that soundtrack is good overall, but it is a surprising one.
There are some really decent tracks in there.
Okay,
There's some really shit tracks in there.
This is the thing. I think a lot of people are predisposed to not liking Y2K soundtrack because Y2K as a game isn't particularly good. But there are some songs in there that are actually genuinely very good.
Most of them are written by Toby Fox.
No, they're not.
Really?
No, okay. Toby Fox, here's my take. Toby Fox has written one song in that game soundtrack, and it is not the best one, despite the fact that everyone says that it is.
Well, that's fair.
I actually think that legitimately you compare it to any other one of Toby Fox's work, and it is one of his worst. I think that's not. I think the song that he has in YiiK is, I think, awful. I actually think that
you said the word.
Oh my god!
Oh, my stomach.
But okay.
I know you haven't played this game, Angles. So.
It's why I'm immune to this effect, yet I'm still not saying the words in case I'm not.
You never know. It could be contagious.
Honestly, I'm gonna be fucking... This is my fucking hill to die on. That game is something that you should play to understand everything you should not do in a game. It is simultaneously the greatest example of the worst game, and a fantastic game for being how bad it is.
Okay.
That's how I feel about Undone the Freeman.
Same.
My god.
I legitimately think that game
Undone
is
the
like...
Freeman has some great music as well. Like,
well,
that's got a decent fucking soundtrack.
I don't remember any of it.
I don't.
I only remember the songs that were rip-offs of Phantom Pain, which is also...
But, I mean, honestly, that's a rip-off of basically every 80s, like...
yeah.
Fucking the track, for example, that plays during the what the fuck scene is actually a really decent track.
It's fine, yeah, it does the job just fine. I didn't think that we would start this topic off by talking about Y2K and Undone the Freeman.
I mean, that certainly is a very much a start that does not set the tone for what I imagine are your very serious feelings about OSTs for video games. Because you strike me as the kind of person who has a very particular taste in OSTs and also a very strong, maybe not exact tiered ranking, but I imagine if someone were to ask you your top 5 like OSTs, you could probably get there, whilst I'm the kind of person who will have forgotten about some of the most influential games very easily within the course of a conversation. Yeah,
I think I could name my top 5 off the top of my head. At the very least 4 of them, which would be... Ridge Racer Type 4 would be my number 1. I fucking love Ridge Racer. And then in no particular order, Halo 2, Payday 2.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah. Fire Emblem Echoes, and it's actually kind of tricky to like then pick another one after that. I'm gonna need to look at my shelves.
Yeah, we are surrounded by piles of disc trays that Thunder has like acquired and placed in the container.
This container is deep and vast, and somewhere in here is a pile of like bootleg CDs from.
I can see a copy of the original Monster Hunter for PS2.
That's in there.
Yeah, I actually want to bring up.
You have the console version of AoE 3?
No, Age of Empires 2.
2, yeah.
Oh, the one that's cut down the hell and back?
Yeah, that's an example of a bad video game soundtrack because they play... It's a Konami port. The MIDIs are completely different, so all the sound fonts are different.
Oh,
it sounds terrible.
How do you fuck up the AO2 soundtrack? That is like god tier music.
Yeah,
fucking Taser is great.
Yeah, Age of Empires 2 soundtrack is one of my go-to relaxation soundtrack things because it's designed to be background music and it's designed to be something. Because
that and AO1 has some really good music as well, but not quite good as 2.
Not Silent Hill 2, you know?
Okay, actually, legitimately,
because I know you enjoyed that.
I actually do think. Okay, this is the problem. I think the best of the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack is some of my favorite music in games. It's tons of these beautiful, ethereal, resonant songs I think are wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part the soundtrack is like super duper good for that. Like especially the soundtrack selection that comes on like the discs, like an hour of songs. It's mainly just that the stuff that is designed to be, you know, for battles or for those things. They're not fun to listen to because they are just tumble dryers going off. They're just they're just like.
I want to add 2 notes to this because this actually got me thinking. 1, I fucking love the Payday 2 soundtrack. My favorite Payday song is Gunmetal Grey from the original.
Yeah, it's great.
Original Gunmetal Grey because that fucking drum beat. And also, I fucking love the Left 4 Dead 2 horde music, but without the fucking constantly. With the fucking just like it's the most generic drum shit. Like it's the most generic BE drum fucking patty music, but it's so good for just committing a feeling of like a wave of things running at you.
Right.
It's a crowd coming straight at you. It's like fucking Black Friday opening hour music, and I love it.
I would have a lot of respect for an American Superstore if they played that as the doors open on Black Friday.
Yes, no, 100%.
That or the...
Dun, 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 dun. Oh no.
What's the Nacht Totten or whatever, the first... the COD Zombies, the first, like, sound. That'd be very good.
Yeah.
Round 2.
Fetch me their souls! Screaming towards it. I don't know, that'd be pretty good. When it comes to, like, actual determining what is for you, the best OST, because you listen to more video game music rather than sort of like standard music. When you say best OST, do you mean subjectively the best in terms of things you've heard from games, or are you talking about the best that you enjoy listening to?
I would go more with the latter because I think it's incredibly hard to determine like an overall objective, like what works best for games, because I don't think that my repertoire for games is broad enough for me to be able to determine that like definitively with that, because that's the problem with trying to be so absolute on the internet. Like everything, whenever you share your opinions, is very much you saying whether you like it or not. You think something is the best of something, but you're never going to experience everything, and someone is always going to have a opposite end to that. It's very hard for me to think of at the top of my head a best soundtrack overall for what it's intending to do.
Right.
Because, to be fair, one of the reasons I would say that Fire Emblem Echoes is one of my favourite soundtracks is because I think the highlights of it are very good, and I'm pretty comfortable listening to all the other stuff in between. Even if it's not remarkable, it still does its job well. So I guess on a functionality standpoint, I'd say that's one of my favourite OSTs.
Right.
Similarly, I'd say the same for Halo 2. Halo 2 in particular is weird, though, because the first disc of it is mainly the highlights of the in-game stuff, and then a bunch of unrelated tracks that don't actually play in the game that are just big bands around that time, like Breaking Benjamin and Hoobastank and that kind of thing. And Incubus, that are just like doing songs as part of this compilation. Yeah. Whereas the second disc on the soundtrack is the suites. It's the stuff that would play in the game in order of when they would play. Which, that's in a similar vein. And I guess in that angle, Halo 2's is also pretty good, but it's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of variations of the same tracks, which is something Marty O'Donnell does a lot.
I mean, if you're good at a particular style of thing, then do a particular style of thing.
Yeah, but some of my favourite soundtracks are the ones that resonate with me while I listen to them, and to admit to some fragility on this terms, some of them make me fucking cry when I think about the memories associated with them.
There is some music that draws tears to my eyes.
Well, yeah, and that's why I asked, because I'm very curious as to what, in your subjective sort of experience of like video game soundtracks, has drawn that out from you. But I was curious if there was anything on there that isn't what you would consider very, very good in terms of the game soundtrack that does bring that out for you. Because I definitely have some answers.
Yeah.
I mean, as a child, I fucking love the homeworld setting. Like I'm gonna spurge out a little bit of that later, but Adagio for Strings by fucking Samuel Barber, like this classical ass track, always draws me to tears because to me it is Caracas burning. Like it is that scene. Even now, the hairs on my neck standing up thinking about that. That scene to like me when I was like fucking 5.
Yeah.
Changed my perspectives on storytelling in games. This classical music piece playing in what has otherwise had quite a very, I want to say, Middle Eastern is the wrong way to describe it, but that kind of style of music. Suddenly having very slow, tragic strings music playing over the biggest atrocity that young me had ever seen in a story, just as a little kid, tore me apart. And now, still makes me feel like, oh, that makes me well up a little bit, thinking about fucking Fleet Command desperately holding back fucking tears as he goes, there's nothing, like, you know, like, he doesn't stop, but it's definitely a military guy trying to be like, the same kind of shit you get from someone saying, like, there's been a nuclear strike on Washington. Yeah. He would be holding back tears whilst trying to say that.
Yeah, that, again, not to go down on this tangent, this is something that I do want to talk about in more detail at a different point.
Yeah.
I would love to know what people's first, especially media specifically, cataclysmic event that was in a media that as a child or as a person you recognised and responded emotionally to. Because, like, I'm trying to think of what it is for myself, but I'd have to do a lot of, like, recollection to think about.
This would be a fun topic for another session.
It would be, because I'm very curious as to what people's... When you're very young, everything is... Any calamity is a calamity, right? And then you have a period of desensitization where a lot of it, like, Winnie the Pooh getting lost, or Thomas the Tank Engine being bricked up inside the tunnel. You know,
I remember seeing, I think it was Timotei LSD, the YouTube pooper, who basically no one's gonna remember, had like a gag Thomas Tank Engine fucking video. But like for that one, bricking up, he plays like some really slow, like what's that sort of sad punk music that was really popular in the 2000s?
Oh Christ!
You know, kind of like, all of it.
You know what I mean? That genre of like Radiohead and that kind of thing. He plays some of that as it does the sort of slow pan out of him being like walled up. Yeah. It's like. And it's like, fucking hell, man!
The thing is with it is that, you go through a period of being like, well, everything is calamitous, then it's one of desensitization after being a child, or being a certainly very type of young child, and then it gets to the point where you're mature enough to understand. I think maybe it is around the time where you start understanding mortality as a person, or maybe some other kind of loss, and then what within the media you were consuming at the time caused you to empathize with a calamity. If any at all. And it's curious that you mentioned, obviously, the game soundtrack and why that gets you to work, because, there's probably stuff in there that sort of does that for me as well, but I don't know what that is yet, and I'd have to look back and think on it. You know?
I think as a kid, just because of the way that I processed emotion and that kind of thing at that age, it took me a long time for me to resonate with a work in that way. Yeah. And a lot of the times it's that it tends to be upon a revisit of an old work that I played, that I then recognize those feelings. And sometimes I do kind of well up. Because it's something like, I guess, I think about like Halo Reach. People love the ending of that game, and I do as well. But the thing that I think gets people emotional about that game, because the ending of Halo Reach is really fucking cool, right? Because you have the like on the Xbox version at least, you have the credits play, and then it cuts to Lone Wolf, which is the last mission where your entire thing is just to survive.
Objective, survive.
Yeah, the cutscene of which is just showing just basically a waste, just a desolate waste. Noble Six is there by themselves. You then get to the it then comes up with the objective survive thing. You fight through what you can. You then have the cutscene of him being killed, and then the cutscene at the very end where, like, you know, there's the helmet, and then the cut to the rest of it. None of that gets me emotionally. The thing that gets me emotionally about that whole bit is that Bungie fucking love breaking up their missions, like the checkpoints of their missions, with a tiny little caption that pops up. No one ever talks about them, but they're almost like in-jokes, like the little things that they say.
Right.
The one in that mission gets me because all it says is, there'll be another time.
Damn.
That gets me.
Yeah,
because to me, fucking growing up and knowing people who I will never talk to again on Xbox Live.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I have said those words to people.
There'll be another time.
I mean, honestly, same. As someone who grew up playing, like, Gmod and fucking, like, early TF2 and all that kind of stuff, so many times I've had friends, like, I don't know if you listen to this, statistically, you are not listening to this, but Red, if you're out there, thank you for my username.
Shit.
My whole, like, Dr. White username came from playing fucking Base Wars with a guy who went by the name Red. And I decided, oh, I'll call myself White. This'll be neat. And then we decided to call ourselves, like, the Doctor's Colour or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And we were like, Doctor this, Doctor that, and we had like, a bunch of like other people join us. And it was a cool, dumb thing on like a server called like Lamo Llama Base Wars from like fucking 2006. No, that's like, way too early. 9. It was like early Gmod. But I mean, shit, that's a throwback. But music.
Yes.
I wanted to just bounce back to something. Because earlier you said, like, oh, people are going to subjectively have an opinion of you based on what your choices and what your favours are, and they're going to make a perspective of you. I was about to say, one of my other favourite tracks that I just passively listen to sometimes, I have a really weird taste in what my relaxing music is, because I like just playing noise sometimes.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, the more, like, combat-centric Silent Hill tracks. Fucking Drag Dragoon's Route C ending. That is the most noisy, like, messy sound for an ending. But it's just in my playlist, and it's just like, I really like things that have big bass drums and things. But it's a bizarre one to have. But, I mean, speaking of favourite soundtracks in order, that's a hard one to say, because I've got a lot of soundtracks I fucking love, like...
Yeah.
I fucking forgot Undertale, but go on.
Undertale's a fucking
do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's one of those ones that, like, off the top of your head, it's kind of hard to do, but of all the people here, I imagine you were the best equipped to do it.
Yeah.
But even so, there are ones that you just forget.
Yeah, sorry.
It's alright.
Wait.
The Command & Conquer series, basically every game, especially for some reason the GLA soundtrack, to me, have such a weird, like, I've come home from school and I'm going to play something to enjoy myself. It's such a weird, like, comfy feeling to go back to listen to those soundtracks. Even now, I can remember that fucking flourish from GLA on the
Yeah.
It's I love it.
Don't you love the China music though? That has that one. It has that one Tibetan Tibetan flute sample.
Yeah, in every single fucking track.
Which is so, it's fucking funny because they play that in like a few Spyro tracks as well, and I'm just like, because when we were playing Generals, I was like, wait a fucking second.
I know this generic.
This is from like Mystic Towers from Spyro 2, like. It's like Cloud Temple, whatever it was called.
Oh god, I'm trying to think of like soundtracks to me that are like meaningful and definitive to my life, because I score differently based on soundtracks I will listen to casually in my day to day. Like, oh, I want to put some music on, I want to listen to something that isn't Renard or whatever generic like EDM bullshit I have on my phone at whatever time. But also, then there's separately soundtracks to me that are so influential to my perspectives of what like storytelling in games and music in games should be and that kind of such.
Yeah.
Like, This is going to be a really weird one. Half-Life 1 soundtrack isn't as good as Black Mesa's soundtrack. I'm going to get, again, I'm going to get crucified for saying this, but I think Black Mesa is a better way to experience Half-Life 1 than Half-Life 1.
You have recommended Black Mesa based on that to me, and I believe you. But I have also not played any of the... Again, we can just add this to the long list of things that I have said I have not played, because I imagine I've said that a lot.
It's a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
The music for Black Mesa, specifically the music that plays when you walk into the ruined labs for the first time, is genuinely better than Half-Life 1's choice of music. It completely retextualizes the feeling of walking through your former workplace, killing things that were your former workmates. These people who just an hour ago were saying, "Oh, good morning, you're late to work. Come on, we'll have a beer later." You're now murdering them with flares. They're screaming while on fire, but this is the best outcome. The Black Mesa soundtrack for that, I don't know if you could dig it up, I'll probably recommend it to you. It is hauntingly good. And compared to the Half-Life 1 soundtrack, which again still has some really good tracks. Half-Life 1 soundtrack definitely feels like it's music taken from a stock film music disc. And that's not fair because someone actually composed those for that game. But a lot of the times it's oh, I recognize this sound effect because it's used in stock movie music.
I mean, across a lot of the Half-Life games, especially Half-Life 2,
it seems some great soundtrack.
It seems like most of the soundtrack is half of it is drum and bassy kind of pumpy up kind of things, and the other half of it is droning atmosphere, dystopian world looming over you kind of music, and then Triage of Dawn is in the middle of it.
Listen to the fucking Triage of Dawn one more fucking time. I'm going to kill maybe... I was going to say someone, but I feel like my rage isn't that high. Maybe a bird. Maybe a pigeon.
You'll be like the barnacles in Half-Life 2. You'll grab a bird to show the physics engine is working.
Check it out! Animals can get caught by barnacles too!
What is your favourite animal to spawn in Gary's mod?
Grigori.
Exactly. That's the correct answer. Father Grigori counts as an animal for the purpose of alignment.
I love the fact that he default... I can't remember if it's the case, but I remember... he would auto-spawn with that weird shotgun he has.
It has... Yeah, that's the one.
Why do I remember that?
That's the thing, he has a weirdly specific shotgun name.
Yeah, speaking of music that gets my go, the fucking Stalker soundtrack, specifically Call of Pripyat's... I think it's called Pripyat's... I think it's... Because the thing is, I've played so many mods now that try and blend the three games into one.
That is the problem with that.
Call of Pripyat's ending track. Okay, story time that's kind of meaningless here, but
no, you're right.
I went through a period of quite a downwards mood during my college years, and I felt very alone and very I was the sort of weird, awkward film student guy who did game dev and game programming and whatnot. I didn't really know what I was doing in my life. I didn't really have a lot of friends because of how scattered my courses were. So my classes were always different people, and they were always off to the next class. And I was always oh, I've got another hour until my next one, so I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to sit in the lunch hall and just eat a pasty quietly for an hour or whatever. I had this real miserable period then. That track was genuinely uplifting because it had such a drive. It is really dumb because it's just the most generic horns and guitar music and you're the victory, you did a good job, generic soldier music kind of thing. But the Stalker soundtrack in general, specifically the guitar music played by random dudes around campfires, because the game is quite diegetic with the soundtrack, to me has such an emotional tie to a time where that was my comfort place. I would come home, I'd play that, I'd enjoy myself. And it genuinely captures, even now, this feeling of I'm comfortable now. And it's such an alien thing, because I go back to play Stalker occasionally, because it's a fantastic game series and I highly recommend it. But I go back to play occasionally and I hear some random dudes around a campfire playing guitar, and I will just stop what I'm doing to sit with them.
Yeah.
I'll sort my inventory out. I'll unload any guns I've stolen. I'll, just generally do some basic like organizational stuff. But I'll sit around the campfire listening to guys whose language I don't understand, while they play guitar casually in the middle of like potentially a very dangerous location, because it's a role-playing experience.
Yeah.
But it's also one that to me holds such an important. Okay, I'm going to tangent again here, but I was watching a review of Golden Era Minecraft, and someone talking about specifically, I can't remember the last time it started snowing, and I went outside my base and just watched the snow. And they cited like a version number before the adventure update as the last time they did that. Yeah. Last time they actually went out of their way to enjoy just this environment, as opposed to being like, it's just a change of weather, I need to be focusing on my next goal. Yeah. And to me, soundtracks for games for those moments, even if they're diegetic, even if they're entirely unrelated but just occur during those times, hold such a meaning and value to me that if I'm ever feeling like I'm sad or I want to like calm down, or I just want to like I've had a shit day at work, or like things aren't working out for me, I'll go and listen to like the original Minecraft soundtrack.
Yeah.
Those
are the good ones.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because this is the thing of my experience with music from video games, right? Mm-hmm. So video game, when I play the game and there's music that is playing, it is part of an experience that I tend not to emotionally separate from the game. However, that music is then stuff I consume outside of the game and get a completely separate sort of appreciation for. And that is the memory that I have for video game soundtracks, not actually playing the game.
But does the echo of the experience of the game carry with the music?
Sometimes, but that is often linked to nostalgia in the examples that it's brought. So the best example, so Minecraft is a good one for that, but it's not one that I would call like up there in my genres of like things. A good example to demonstrate kind of the way I experience music in games is Skyrim.
Oh god, yeah.
I have played too much of that game. I have owned it across multiple platforms, as a lot of people have.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks.
But the music that the way I consumed that music was during university. Someone had put a 12-hour-long loop of the Skyrim Atmospheres track, and I will listen to that. I would headphones full volume, cannot listen to anything else. Working in Maya, UE4, Photoshop for all the concept art. That is what I did. It was the entirety of third year, pretty much, was that. And so now the Skyrim's Atmosphere playlist is both a calm down thing, but also a productivity thing. Yeah. It helps me zone out the world and work, which is not what Skyrim's why the soundtrack is great, because it works well in the game. It's one of those ones where I have a completely different experience of the music separate from the game, and it's retained that memory. So Persona 5, I have never played it. Everyone who I know who has played it and enjoyed it, and I go, I'd quite like to play it. They go, do not. We know you. We know what you like. You will not like this. Do not play it.
Fuck 'em. Give it a go.
The thing is, I probably will, but the thing is the music slaps. Like, the Persona 5 music is so fucking good. Again, I don't experience it within the game, but I experience it outside of that context as a chill background thing whilst I'm doing sort of painting or any other kind of work I'm doing.
Join us later on the channel for our Angles and Thunders Let's Play of Persona 5.
It will go entirely.
I'd watch that.
Yeah. It would be funny. Again, there are so many games.
As we fight over if we want to fuck the teacher or fuck the doctor.
Both.
Alright, sounds good to me.
No, it's just the teacher.
I can't wait for you to get bullied in a bar because you have two romantic interests.
Yeah.
Of all the things I've been bullied of in the past, that's the one that's always got me. No, dude, but then there are these experiences, right, that tie separately outside of the game that make the soundtrack mean a lot to me. Final Fantasy VII, the original game, is a soundtrack where several tracks from it I can't take. I will cry. They break me.
Yeah.
Now, there is a very specific reason for that, because the reason I asked about the Calamity stuff and when, as a child, did you mature enough to perceive that as
Yeah.
that game's story does not affect me did not affect me. And it was one of those ones where I was like, oh, everyone's going to die. Whatever, it's a game, right? That game has a context for me that makes the music mean a lot more to me. During my parents' divorce, when they would scream at each other and get violent, I would take my little brother, we would go to the basement where the games console was.
Play Final Fantasy VII.
I would lock us both in and them out, and we would play, and I would play the game, and we would have the volume up so loud that we couldn't hear them.
God.
And so that music puts me back to that kind of feeling, and the feeling of vulnerability of being a child and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to overshare. I am okay. But I'm bringing it up because it's another example of a music soundtrack having its own identity from the game, and that's why it means something to me. As again, another side note, I fucking love Bloodborne. Bloodborne is one of my favorite games ever.
We'll get a PC port someday.
Please.
No, we won't.
I'll just emulate a PS4. At this point, it's probably the easiest way.
It's what people do, and it makes the most sense, unfortunately. That game soundtrack has, and it's a very odd feeling to know this, but it has the piece of music my coffin is going to be going towards the ground in.
Yeah.
There is a track in that. It's Gurman the Last Hunter. First Hunter, rather. That is the sound. That is the soundtrack I want playing as I'm led to my gravesite and lowered into it. And that is a very weird feeling as a living person to know that.
Honestly, that's the same thing I have about Dark Shape of Strings. I feel like if I were to spontaneously die, I feel like that would be my hey, remember me about this music, because this was something that meant a lot to me.
I'm thinking of being lowered into my grave to the Golden Alpaca battle song from Y2K.
It's the thing, and the thing is about that is like it's amazing because that track, for anyone who has played Bloodborne and knows where that track is from, they know that it's kind of meaningful because it is like right near the end, but the boss that it involves is kind of a pushover. And the game in and of itself has so much great music. And it was interesting to talk about when do we listen to game soundtracks, because some of the Dark Souls music is incredible throughout the series. But would you go on a bus on a commute to work listening to like some of the boss music?
How depressed I am.
I legitimately have, because this is the weird thing, is that I feel as though music in games is simultaneously able to resonate a lot of emotions within me, and it's something that really connects with me.
Yeah. While
simultaneously there are a lot of contexts where I can have it be something that I can utterly remove the context from and I can listen to casually. For instance, it's as occasionally, if I'm not particularly happy with the albums that I have, both for regular bands or for game soundtracks that I have on my phone, I will occasionally be like, fine, what's on the D&D playlist I prepared 3 years ago? Or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned the Dark Souls thing, because I have 1 or 2 Dark Souls boss themes in some of my like D&D playlists for like things that I've run. So I've listened to just casually to Gravelord Nito's battle theme while on the bus. But also, I have examples of sillier context to listening to game soundtracks I want to mention, but I think if we're in the mood of talking about the more serious stuff, I'll stay on topic for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned the D&D soundtrack that you made for our campaigns.
Yeah.
When I suggested, like, offhandedly some Project Wingman soundtrack,
you
included that in a really good way. But at the same time, for me, that hits really fucking hard. Like, Kings is a fantastic track. But at the same time, it's like, oh god, I feel 2 emotions right now, because on the one, I know where that is in the game, and 2, I know where that is in the context of a story we spent 4 years basically telling together about, sad people trying to fix a world of and kill a god.
Yeah, because that's the thing I would want to chip into as well with that, because Kings, I feel, we've yet to finish Project Wingman. We're going to do that like tomorrow.
When you get there, you will know how powerful that fucking song is.
Right, because that's the thing, is that I imagine that I will associate Kings in this sort of double way with both the game and with the character Kyrix, in the same way that I already, at this point in time, associate a lot of the Fire Emblem Three Houses music with Aeolus, who was the other villain in that campaign, because I associate some of the Three Houses tracks, the ones especially that play around the character of Dimitri, I associate with Aeolus. So the songs from that game soundtrack have a double hitting thing of both. I love Dimitri as being discount guts and being like, and having this tragic story and him going through this process of grief and like changing as a person, while also simultaneously I associate these songs with this character that I basically use as a proxy to
explore your own issues.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fucking D&D, not
that was the entirety of my masters, was explaining how that is a dichotomy of like how people play the game and how they want to play the game.
Yeah.
Bringing up Guts is interesting because again, a lot of the music from both of the films and the TV show, that's huge.
The fucking Guts theme is like, I know it's used as a meme sometimes, but even so, they're just like a.
Yeah, that one is
so good.
Is good. Murder is another one that has a level of intensity to it. Blood and Guts is a huge one, and again, that all ties back into, as you were saying, because we played a D&D campaign. I played a character whose like attachment to that music. They use that as a theme, and it just became, it has another meaning for it, and it's for me with video game soundtracks. I notice when a video game soundtrack is good. But the time that I really appreciate video game soundtracks is when I separate it into its own entity and it becomes its own thing, separate from the game. Abyss Watchers as a track in Dark Souls, fantastic boss, fantastic track. It lives within the game. But then something like Eris's theme from Final Fantasy VII is not. It no longer in my mind and in my sort of experience of life. It is not connected to the character Eris. It is connected to my experience as a very small child having to deal with all the crap that I was dealing with at the time. So that doesn't make the music any better or any worse, but it makes me appreciate it in a completely separate way. And I think that's kind of the beauty of
kind of in the same way that I appreciate the Stalker soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. And that kind of leads to it. And this, I was talking to a friend about this with Lord of the Rings actually as well. We were talking about film soundtracks, and Lord of the Rings is another really big one that at the time I just watched. I was like, oh yay, fantasy adventure film. And now that I look back on it and I watch bits from it, and I've been watching sort of like some of the films again, the themes of like the Fellowship breaking apart, and we were talking about experiences with like friends that we had and that we no longer speak to on Xbox Live, but it's like, that stuff suddenly means a lot more to me now as an adult at the age that I am, and at the sort of the turning point in the road of life of where we could go from here. And it's just so much like, wow, that music and the themes of the film live on their own outside of the context of the film as well. And it's baked.
That's the hallmark of a good piece of music.
It is.
That individually it can stand on its own without having to depend on the context of the scene it was in.
Which is ironic, because a good soundtrack is one that does not steal the limelight from whatever it is the soundtrack of.
I'd argue there is times where one or the other works. For example, there's a track, I can't remember off my head right now, the name of it. I posted it a lot in a Discord we have about cats. There is, I imagine you'll cut it in here, but there's this like constant meme of cats making biscuits to this like jazz music.
Yeah, I know the one.
And I'm like, oh, that's a really cool piece of music. I really like that. And then I went to go see the film that it's from. That music genuinely makes my hair stand on end now because of how fucking amazing it is. How perfect it is for the scene it's used in. Like, fuck, it is good. And to this, like now I go and listen to this fucking funny cat videos and then be like, oh, we're gonna make little biscuits to this like jazz music, and I'm like, oh, I'm sad now because I know that's from.
I have the
beauty of it.
I have the exact same response with Ever at the End of Time. I hear that in a meme and I'm just like, I've listened to that. I have had that experience. I never want to have it again. That if anyone wants to make themselves really sad, do listen to that, because if you make it all the way through and don't immediately call whatever living relatives you have and say that you love them, then you've listened to it wrong. It was literally, I listened to it, and my family has sort of like Alzheimer's dementia running through it, and I immediately called both my grandparents to tell them that I love them. They thought something was wrong, and I was like, no, nothing's wrong. Like, I'm not asking for money.
I just experienced something.
Yeah, I've just gone through this thing, and I want to tell you that you mean a lot to me whilst they remember that.
It's funny you bring up that album, because that one has a really powerful title in one of its tracks. my favourite track from that entire album, I say favourite track as in like song I can actually comfortably listen to, is one literally titled "The Only Thing You'll Want Is to Come Back Here" or something like that.
Oh, I know the one. Yeah,
that one is fantastic. I love like the feelings of it, but then you realise it's the only one that's actually enjoyable. That's where you want to go back to.
I can't listen to any point of that fucking 4 hour and 20-minute goddamn.
You can't go back. You've done it once.
I just you can't, and I love that as a piece of art, and a piece of saying
it's
something else.
Yeah, I've never listened to the entirety of Ever at the End of Time. I think the closest I've had to it is I did listen to the entirety of It's like a similar sub-album called An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, or a similar one, which...
Well, I mean, it's all part of the Caretaker series.
Yeah.
It's all part of the Caretaker.
I mean, I want to bring up, on the topic of that particular album, my favourite part of that whole narrative of that artist and the album is, after the final one was done, a post was made, because there was like a narrative basically going on about someone's like deterioration over time. The final post is written from the perspective of somebody else saying the artist is dead. The artist has died, their dementia has taken hold of them, and they have passed away. And I know it was always contextualized as that, but seeing that suddenly put into context, an album in its focus explores the concepts of dementia and the decline. But then outside of that is an individual, like, obviously this is another layer of narrative, it's not true, whatever, but is someone experiencing that, trying to put into music the experience they are having. And suddenly it has this, it's like a fucking layer cake of emotion. Because there's a whole nother layer now of, oh fuck, this has a secondary meaning now. It's not just a story or a narrative experience of someone deteriorating, it's someone who's deteriorating trying to make a narrative experience about what deteriorating is like. And that, even now, makes like my fucking like limbs shake a little bit emotionally. Like, ooh, it puts energy in me.
I just art like that is fantastic. And it's this. So I was listening to a collection of various pieces of music, and that got me to thinking about what I would have as my like sort of funeral dirge. And it's very odd as someone who is alive to think about that. But the reason that got me there, and it's interesting because it makes me think about when you talk about that, was Ed's funeral.
Oh god, yeah.
So Ed of Tom Scar and Ed fame.
Yeah.
And
fuck, that hit you like a brick when that happened.
That and the fact that they made it like they made this to try and be a funny time. Like they came in to the Imperial March from Star Wars. And it's just like, it's very odd listening to Ever at the End of Time and sort of having that sort of emotional reflection on like age and dying old. But then there's another thing entirely looking back onto the music that has made our lives. So I mean, we know we were talking about like how much we experience game music and how much we listen to it. Is that the stuff? Are we going to end up, if we die young, or even if we die old? Is that what's going to be playing? Are we going to be like Ed? Are we going to have meme funerals? Because that speaks more true to who we are and what we enjoy.
It's a very good question, because by God, I don't want to even begin thinking about what I do with my funeral and stuff, because
we don't have to, right?
We shouldn't have to, but because it's a thing of like, okay, well, I wouldn't want a funeral to be a particularly sad, sordid affair. It's going to be for the nature of what it is, so I'd rather take it as like something that's funny. Especially when I consider my life and what I've done with it. Like, you know, I'd want people to... It's a bit of a cliche phrase, I think, especially among my family, but you want it to be a celebration of a life and not a celebration of the... Not celebration of the death,
Mourning
but like a...
loss.
Funnily enough, it's I want a tangent here, sorry, but my grandparents... My granddad, as he got older, loved him a bit, he's a great lad, but as he got older, he hit a certain age and he said, I'm having a wake.
All right.
And I went to this party because we were just like, oh, it's just a family get together. No, he was determined to tell everyone, no, I'm alive and I want to party with you people while I'm here.
Damn.
But I will probably die in the night at some point. And I want to have a memory of loving you people and be like, he had a fucking like toast and everything, saying, fuck, making well up thinking about it. This is really heavy.
We have gone from like memeing to like actual like, okay, so this is sad emotional stuff.
But like, going to my fucking grandparents' living wake and having that moment of like, when you were saying like, are our funerals going to be meme funerals? It's like, the old generation already do that anyways.
True.
Like, fuck.
Basically, what I want is
Memento Mori, baby.
If I were to outlive Thunder, I'm not going to, but if I was, I want to, like, just as he's being lowered in, I won't be a pallbearer, I'm sorry. I'm not strong enough. As we lower you in, I want you to have asked specifically for a recording to play as you lower in, which is just the Dawn of War tutorial. And it gets progressively more muffled.
Yeah. Oh my God. Inside
yeah.
Like,
welcome to the single-player campaign of Dawn of War. Don't say by listening to me, and Dirk gets put on.
You know what's really fucking dumb? I just remembered a Cyanide and Happiness gag where it's like Rudy. I don't know if anyone's seen this one, but it's like this kid who's constantly like cursing, and his teacher goes like, "Rudy, you can't spend your whole life being rude to people." And he goes, "Yeah, I can. You fucking..." And it has his whole life with like an endless stream of him cursing, but it's like a faction of his life.
Yeah.
And then it ends with him finishing, "Motherfucker," and then passes away. And then it cuts to the grave, and this old-ass teacher walks up, pours, like, a fucking juice box out in the grave, and goes, "You knew my granddad? Yeah. He called me a bitch." I really hope someone does that for me. It's just like, "Who are you?" And it's like, "Oh, I knew this guy. He was a fucking asshole." Like, I want someone to show up and be like, "I was a mysterious person in your like family member's history, and I'm never going to explain the narrative of this.
Oh my God!
He called me a bitch."
Red turns up, pulls that on your grave.
Honestly, I feel like that would happen at my funeral. Is that my family would be like, "Who are you people?" And it's like, we're the people that that new Thunder
as fun.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a bunch of furries and people in lock outfits and all that kind of stuff. We were his real friends.
Okay, let's step away from funeral dirges and the sadness of music.
All right.
I have a topic, a concept for it, rather. Have you ever played a game that you have input your own soundtrack to? Because
I've done that for 0K, but that's primarily because I don't.
0K, you can put fucking OGG files in the main folder and it will play whatever you want there.
Yeah.
Have I put a soundtrack onto a game that already has one? Have I done that?
See, for me, I play a lot of like factory simulation games because they're just fun. Like Factorio, Satisfactory, those kind of things. I never listen to the bass soundtrack in those because they're always like the most like dry, like soothing. Like the Factorio soundtrack, as decent as it is the dullest shit imaginable. I actually don't enjoy it. Like it's boring. So I end up playing like just music in the background of like, okay, well, so if I'm not playing listening to like, I don't know, a fucking H-Bomber Guy video or whatever in the background, I will just like put music on. And the weird thing is for me now, I associate a really like bubbly, high energy EDM soundtrack by Metarum, who, if anyone's listening to this and heard that stuff, you know that kind of like energy of Metarum stuff.
Yeah.
To fucking playing Satisfactory, one of the slowest, like meticulous factory building games, and like memories of fucking explosion jumping in that game and becoming like the typical TM2 demo man.
Yeah.
It's just like EDM music that really doesn't fit like the style of it, and it's weird because it brings the point to me of recontextualizing the feeling of the game via the choice of music you decide to play over it.
So I have an example of that, and it sounds like a meme, but it genuinely wasn't. I used to play a lot of World of War on sort of the harder difficulties, and the problem with that game is whenever you died, the music would just restart.
Yeah.
So what you would get is often you would just get the same like 5 or 6 seconds sting, dying, especially if you die in if you get to a quick save spot and you're in a bad place. So what I actually did was I muted the soundtrack and actually got a whole bunch. On YouTube there were several compilations of like sad war music, and I'd just play that, or I'd play like certain things that was kind of similar, and it would fit really, really well. And it's ironic because that is eventually how Battlefield 1 would open. Is that you would assault a German trench, but every time you die, the name. Well, no, it would show you the name of it would be a randomly generated name of a person and a birth date, and then when they died, and then it would switch to another one. And it's funny that back in the day, before that stuff was going on, I was just like, oh, this kind of like the World of War music fucking slaps.
It's great, yeah.
Like in terms of soundtracks that I've really enjoyed, World of War was huge. But yeah, playing that. Like that is probably the only game I can think of off the top of my head, but I've definitely done it with others, and I'm trying to think of what they are.
Yeah,
go on.
Because I was literally just going to add is that at the top of my head, I don't think I've actually done that with any game because because I actually find the base soundtrack to a game very sacred to the experience of it.
Right.
So even though I think that it is, it's not invalid to replace it with your own music, especially for the reasons that both of you have given. I think they're completely valid.
Yeah.
Again, 0K, technically that stock music is part of the 0K experience, but I changed it.
Music is so bad.
But I changed it to Halo 1 music because I preferred it.
Play 0K if you enjoy Supreme Commander style games and want something new. It's good and it needs more players. Please.
Yeah, 0K is great. But yeah, no, other than that, I tend to find I just stick with what the game comes with because to me that's part of it.
Yeah,
I kind of understand that, and the weird thing is I would compare that to someone being like, I can't watch movies unless it's in the cinema. I would genuinely put that at the same level. Like, I can fully understand someone being like, I can't really enjoy a movie unless I'm going to properly watch it in like a proper environment to see it, as opposed to watching it on my phone or whatever. I've watched V for Vendetta on like 4 different fucking platforms, and the best time I've had was sitting with friends and watching it. But I can totally understand the experience and how it's meant to be projected is inherently sacred to the experience intended.
Yeah.
And replacing that with your own stuff can violate the intended experience, which I can totally understand is something some people would very clearly be like, no, I must feel this how it's supposed to be played.
I thought of another one. Project Zomboid.
Oh god, yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of their soundtrack.
It's not great.
I know people who love it, but like some of the generic post-apocalyptic mixes on YouTube are great. Like ones that have real like sentences that just say you're the last person alive on planet Earth and a full stop, all in lowercase.
Yeah, those like spaced out a little bit as well.
Yeah, that genre of music. I'm just looking towards the disc trays to see if there's anything. Yeah, Project Zomboid is one. But I agree with a lot of games. So Bloodborne is one that I wouldn't dream of replacing. Dark Souls as well, because I feel like the music contributes to an atmosphere that is essential.
Well, for me, it's fucking generals, and that music is incredibly bland, but at the same time, it's so important to the game's feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, I imagine a lot of people who played Dawn of War 1 probably find the track Chant to be a very, very powerful one. And yet, the more I think about Dawn of War 1's soundtrack in particular, the less I care for it, because it's decent, but it is a large chunk of it is generic. And Chant, I think, is profound to a lot of people who play Dawn of War just because it's not a very basic drum beat with some strings.
Yeah, the Dawn of War soundtrack slaps. Like the first ones, like all the expansions, like especially Dark Crusade had some really great. The Imperial Guard theme.
Oh yeah, like, the Imperial Guard theme is fucking masterpiece.
Like genuinely, that is what is playing when like in my head when I play 40k like now.
Yeah,
and it's something that when we do sort of get to play inside like a setting where I can control the music, then the Dawn of War soundtrack is like
the
Imperial Guard theme. In terms of like 40k music, is up there with the Mechanicus soundtrack.
The
masterpieces.
Yeah.
Just carrying both the setting and the faction. Because that's one that I always like. The Tau music, for example, has the same problem as the China music in general.
Yes, it does. Because oh my god, it's just making me think.
I think it has the same flute at some points.
It might actually, but the. It's actually making me think people might say, I wouldn't want to do it if it seems like I'm milking it, but I might legitimately be like, what if I did a video that's just ranking the Dawn of War tracks? Because this is the thing, is especially with the Dawn of War soundtracks, is, for one, I do actually legitimately think the Winter Assault onwards tracks, like made by Ein Zer, I think are actually better than the Jeremy Soule-led Dawn of War 1 bass tracks. Like, some of those are still great. Force Commander as a track is beautiful. It's like it's one that plays over a lot of skirmishes, but it's a great track. And then you got Dawn of War 2, which that's like my workout music. Like every time I go to the gym, twice a fucking week, I put the goddamn Dawn of War 2 soundtrack on, and I lift more than I expect because it's like because it's pumping up, and Angels of Death always hits when I fucking need it to. But at the same time, I also think about the Dawn of War 2 soundtrack because I think it's fantastic. And yet overall, I'm kind of like, too much of it sounds too much like itself at times.
Yeah, it has a very I heard that described as peanut butter music, in that it has a consistency that is uniform throughout.
Yeah, which is mostly good. In some ways, I probably would say the Dawn of War 2 soundtrack is better than 1's, but at the same time, the highlights of it are very, very good, but Dawn of War 1's fucking... I think I would prefer it as, like, a background music, like, thing to play a game to, whereas Dawn of War 2's is, like, so exciting, you know? I think it's too...
It's funny that you mention that, because actually, now that I think about it, as much as I fucking love the Mechanica soundtrack, I'm really tired of the Mechanica soundtrack.
Oh, really?
Like, it's Praise the Omnissiah and, like, maybe 2 other tracks that get played a lot.
Constantly played.
Hey, we all love Doom, right? How fucking sick are you of the only thing they fear is you and BFG Division?
Yeah.
How many times have you had to fucking hear those songs?
I play a Barbarian in 5th edition, I am not sick of it.
Okay.
The experience of me being only a few years different age from you. But my immediate thought was, yeah, man, I'm really tired at Hell's Gate. And then you said BFG Division, I'm like, oh, fuck, yeah.
Oh, because you're thinking...
Yeah, I have heard that so many times. Please, just give me another track.
What are you talking about? I really like how they mix it up as soon as you go into the basement and it starts flooding.
Give me fucking What's-His-Face has the shotgun, or like, never mind. No one told me about id.
Fucking goddamn.
Okay, real talk. I played so much Doom roguelike as a kid.
Yeah.
That game was great, but realizing now in retrospect that I don't like roguelikes, I just like that one because it was Doom themed. It's such like a man. I had such a bitch boy opinion of games.
I remember your I don't know if it's even still up. But I remember you had a video about
parody of Let's Players where I like bitched about how bad Let's Playing has become via Doom Rogue, and then I became a Let's Player. Fucking
well. Here's the thing, you're a Let's Player with effort. Because you edit things, like you actually edit in gags and you make it more of like a walk by rather than it just being, rather than PewDiePieing it or whatever.
Yeah. I think I would describe my style of videos as talk through.
Yeah, that's a fair way of putting it.
I'm not describing how you should play this game and telling you the cool strategies. I'm playing it and talking about how I played it.
Aren't they reviews?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, reviews require me to actually have an opinion at the end that isn't, I really like this game. It's shit. I really like this game.
What are you talking about? That's how I feel about almost everything I play these days, except for Dawn of War 1.
Every single video I do ends with me going, oh yeah, this game was great. Fucking terrible, but this game was great because I played it as a kid and I love it. And it's like, this isn't an opinion. This is just me stroking my own ego, going like, games I played as a kid were great. Fucking awful, but they were great.
That's just YouTube.
Legacy of Pain.
That is just YouTube, essentially. I thought of another one.
Go on.
Escape from Tarkov. That is another one that I cut the soundtrack off of and then play something depressing. I actually play Russian war music from Chechnya, generally.
There's a really good soundtrack of Russian music from the Afghanistan war.
Yes,
that plays really well.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you mentioned like the Battlefield 1, like people dying and the name string up, if you want music with a similar kind of vein, a soundtrack and a game for both. I had kind of covered it at one point, but unfortunately it's now unlisted because I used music from a major musician and they fucking copyright claimed it.
Yeah.
But a game that genuinely to me I fucking love, but also traumatizes me extremely is DEFCON. The soundtrack to DEFCON. The soundtrack to DEFCON genuinely has people crying.
Yeah, it's
hauntingly good.
It's a really good soundtrack.
I feel the same way about This War of Mine soundtrack as well, because that is super, super simple. But again, it has just such a powerful...
The problem with This War of Mine is once you reach a certain point, you end up just like making money making sugar wine.
Yeah, if you play it too much, you will gamify it. But in general, it's still really, really good.
The concept of gamifying someone's like... Again... I have the same problem with DEFCON in that I've gamified to the point where I want to win the game. Yeah. And there are little moments where I blink and for a second I see the horror. Like, This War of Mine killing the sniper with a brick.
Yeah.
Like, melee killing him with a brick.
Yeah.
I think that's actually like a thing. But you know, you can go...
Raiding the old people's house because they literally can't stop you.
Yeah. But no, killing the sniper, for example, that's it's something that you feel like, I've done something good. I've saved people's lives. But at the same time, I have just murdered a man.
Yeah, with a...
And I feel like it was justified, and I feel like were they feeling the same thing?
Yeah.
Were they doing what they think was right? But at the same time, you blink and you're like, oh no, mechanically I was doing this so I could cross the market without getting shot. Like, I wasn't doing this because I wanted to get the loot from this level. I was doing this because it's fucking annoying to try and access the market without getting shot.
It's that gamification of Christ. I was actually wanting to say about listening to music outside of the context of itself, because I had a weird cold calling job where, for some reason, I had bought the Y2K soundtrack. I nearly said the wrong word.
You nearly said the wrong word.
And I was listening to it on my commutes. So there were times where I would unironically be like, you know the American Psycho Patrick Bateman walking into his job with the headphones in, like that, going into his office. I was like that, but listening to the fucking like Golden Alpaca battle theme.
I am imagining you with the exact just kind of deadpan expression that Bateman has whilst walking through the halls.
That's how I felt at that.
Menacingly, just kind of staring as that is kind of blaring through your head.
Yeah. But the second one was at a different job I would listen to while doing like administration work. The soundtrack to a game called Tulip. That has an incredibly goofy soundtrack, because Tulip is an incredibly goofy game. It's very hard to succinctly describe it. Other than the premises, you are a Japanese boy and you want to kiss a girl in town, but your heart is not strong enough to be able to do it. So you have to go around town kissing other people.
And proving yourself to a sentient tree that judges how good you are at loving.
Yeah, the love...
Did Incel make this game?
It's the thing is, it's probably made by a Volcel, because it's made by someone that doesn't seem to know what sex is.
Right.
Because it's
yes, the monk approach.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big plot points, is like you go to a monastery and you have to fucking help these monks.
Jesus.
And at some point, a guy that you know he commits a crime of beating his wife, so the police walk in and they go, all right, you've got 3 crime stamps, we're sending you to the graveyard, and they literally lock him in like a crucifix pose underneath someone's grave.
Powerful.
And you have to go down there and break him out by also committing crimes, which are apparently walking around naked, smoking before you're 18, and
running at night.
Yeah, and breaking curfew. And that's literally it. But the It's about... Anyway, the Tulip soundtrack's fucking weird. It's a mix of a cappella and kazoos and a bunch of other, like, weird shit. And I would just be... And just because I was so done with that job that I would just listen to this music to get through the day. So it would just be... I would just be, like, typing away at fucking emails while listening to people going... and all this stuff.
I am honestly very excited for the List Goes On episode on Tulip when it inevitably happens.
Yes, because we will have to talk about Tulip, because that was on the list. But
weird game.
Fucking it is. I think a similar soundtrack for the same energy was that I'd also listen to the soundtrack of The Neverhood, which was
that's a good one.
Yeah, it was a point-and-click adventure claymation game that has a similar soundtrack where...
The weird thing with The Neverhood for me is, for some reason, my brain always thought it was a web series.
No.
Just because it had such a prevalence on early web, I thought it was just a web series.
Like a Homestar Runner style. Yeah.
But that's had some games as well.
That's true, and Strong Bad has been in Poker Night of the Inventory and all of this
character.
Stuff. Yeah.
Was that the one with Heavy?
Yeah, it was Max from Sam & Max, Strong Bad from Homestar Runner, the Heavy from Team Fortress 2, and one of the Penny Arcade guys.
Yeah. I'm gonna be fucking cut. Well, again, Penny Arcade, one of the better of webcomics. But also, like, real talk, Sam and Max are like the peak gay couple, and no one can argue otherwise.
Oh, I didn't know they were a thing. To be fair, I've never played the game, so...
One of the creators had a wedding cake with the two of them on the wedding cake as the bride and groom.
That's very cute.
Very heavily implied that these two are married to one another. Like, one of the common jokes in the line is one of them saying to the other, like, I didn't even know you liked girls. And the other going, Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, you don't even like girls. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it's those two and not Wallace and Gromit that ended up being canonically married, because that would have been a bit weird.
They're coming to take me away, haha. Okay, real talk. Have you ever heard the sequel to that song?
No, I've never heard the sequel to.
So there's a song that was like popular on like early YouTube called "They're Coming to Take Me Away." It was really common, like used in like FMVs for like characters who were crazy.
Yeah, I think it even predates the internet. I think it was like a radio station.
But like it was used a lot in that period. It has a sequel that recontextualizes the character like abusing their dog in the original song to being their wife, and they are hallucinating that woman is a dog.
Oh.
And she's sending him away because of these hallucinations. And it's equally as vitriol of they're coming to take you away. Like, she is enjoying the fact that he is being sent away for being this crazy. But, like, when I heard that, I was like, what the fuck? There's a narrative to this funny song I saw in, like, in YouTube poops? Or Helsing AMVs?
The early internet was really a special thing, wasn't it?
We can't go back.
We can't. Not for a long time.
Would you?
Well,
if you could, would you, like, bring back old internet?
Yes.
I would spoil Lost.
What?
If I could go back in time, I would spoil Lost before it happens.
You'd spoil Lost.
Because then, like, the history of that entire thing, I was like, who was this Dr. White and how did he know?
Oh, I think legitimately I would, especially if it means I get to spend more years living at a time where the economy is slightly less fucked.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that you are the age one now, and you regress the internet back to what it was like decades
so we give it a transorbital lobotomy and puts it back into like a childhood state. Cool.
Kind of.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'd do that. I don't like how fast the internet is growing.
Know. I feel like my reservations to that is just me growing older. To bring back what the internet was when I was a kid would hurt so many people.
I mean, that's a good point, but
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. But I only saw them because I lived on a period of the internet where, oh yeah, I'll download this random Flash file, this Swift file, and see what. Oh, it's a screamer that won't stop. Great.
I know the one. Yeah.
It is like. Oh. I have experienced things that this generation will not, and I am glad they won't.
Yeah,
I am against internet censorship, but I am also like, we as a people control the content that is existing, and I am glad they don't have to experience the things that I experience.
But do you think that the people of today would post that on old internet?
Probably. If they were back to where they were then, the internet would still be as it was. The level of self-content, like, again, if we're thinking like the advertisements reversed and everything, and the way the pre-net boom bubble burst and all that, yeah, of course they would, because there's no like content creation at that point. Something awful reigns supreme. Lotax isn't dead. Let's get back to music, shall we?
Yeah. I think when it comes to music, I think about like ones I'm nostalgic to, and it's odd because although I listen to a lot of music outside of the context of a game as well, and that kind of thing, I think the music that tends to move me to kind of wrap somewhat round to your point about like recognizing the emotional impact of it is it tends to be very much nostalgia driven, but it's selective, right? Because I would say that if you had to force me to pick, like, you know, what's your favorite game? What is the one? What is it absolutely? I'd probably say either one of the Crash games or one of the Spyro games, because I think they were incredibly formative to how I see games now. Like, they were the childhood games.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that the music from any of those move me. I think they're good, and I think they're special. Spyro has a slightly better chance than Crash, and I'm even then not entirely. Just because of, like, the overworld themes in Spyro 2 are very tranquil, and they're really nice. But, like, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. And the same would go for, like, Dawn of War, none of the music there particularly moves me, or that kind of thing too. But I think it's normally the context of certain things. Like, for instance, spontaneously I thought to myself, alright, what's a game soundtrack I don't Google to listen to enough? Like one that I really should be reminded of a bit more. And it's a very weird one, because it's one of my favourites, and it's Tomodachi Life. I like that game a lot, because it's debatably not even a game. It's a fucking, like, it's a
life sim, essentially.
It's The Sims for Nintendo.
It's The Sims for Nintendo. I've seen someone describe it as a goldfish bowl, and I like that comparison. Because it's not so much that you control the outcome, and more so that you kind of like watch it go, and I guess I like that about like those types of games. But I listened to the soundtrack of it, and the first track that comes up is the song that plays when you are initially setting the game up. And bearing in mind, Tomodachi Life is a bit like Animal Crossing. It's a game that you are meant to keep going back to revisit your islands, to check in on your townspeople and all of this kinds of stuff. So you don't tend to restart the game often to make a new save or that kind of thing. I did that and realised, fuck me, I've not heard this music since 2014.
Ooh.
And this was where 300 hours began.
Yeah.
Because I logged into that game a lot. Like, that was my daily like login. I 100% did Tomodachi Life, and I was like, and
an old man, but minus solitaire.
Oh really?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but it was a thing of me going, oh fucking hell! Like, actually, this moment where I made everything start, that was making me well up because of the association of all the memories of it.
Yeah.
By comparison, I guess something that's more directly impactful to like what comes from the game itself, I guess there's a few tracks in Undertale that are like that. I think oddly though, the one that does it for me is probably the Ascor boss fight, because I fucking love the Ascor boss fight in Undertale, because like
I don't really get sad about the Undertale music, but I have a story to tell about that, but I'll let you know.
It's just that I was firmly convinced, as quite a few players probably were at that point in the game, that I would be able to spare Asgore, because the game very much makes a point of you can spare everybody, and you can make them your friend, and you don't have to kill everyone and that kind of thing. And you get to Asgore and think you're going to do the same thing, and Asgore does not give you the fucking option.
Yeah.
And he forces you to fight for you to fight him, and all of this stuff. And I played through that fight multiple times, hoping I could just time him out, and it never worked.
I wanted to say something to add to that. I found out recently that if you die during the Asgore fight and then come back, you have the chance as a choice to tell him he's killed you before.
I've seen
and
that,
his response is to just nod sadly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck me.
Yeah.
Ow! You tell a guy like, hi, I'm immortal and I've lived through this before and you've killed me once, and his response is, I know, and I have to keep doing it. Like, god damn it. Okay, so, sad Undertale story music chime though. When I was going through my depressive period, that was the soundtrack I would go to try and pull myself out of it. And the true, like, the Asriel fight music, for example, to this day, genuinely hurts to listen to. Because it carries both the first time I experienced that fight and having my entire perspective was like the narratives of an RPG and the meta sort of like layers of true ending upon replay upon that kind of thing. But also this personal trauma that I went through, and having that as my outlet soundtrack of something I would go and listen to and sit watching the train stations over. I'm not going to name the train station, but there was a train station that the trains would always go back and forth. I would just watch the trains go by. Like, I wasn't there to do anything dangerous, but I would just enjoy sitting there listening to music and listening to these trains, and it carries such a heavy emotion to me now that even now I love the Undertale soundtrack. I get that track, I skip it. Because that carries, to me, such an emotion that I cannot experience it.
God damn. Like, it's heavy, but that's the thing.
You played it during Dragon-like, and I was like, I have to leave.
Oh, yeah, well that was a recommendation from one of the players. I don't think he knew.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, time for me to go to another room, because this music hurts.
Yeah, shit, man.
Yeah,
if I'd known...
What was that? What part of Dragon-like?
That was fighting Tiamat.
Yeah,
just straight.
One of the last fights.
Like, because only 3 songs actually played during the Battle of Tiamat, and that was one of them. Like in the middle.
Yeah.
Like it was before. It was before the actual beatdown. You know, man.
For crazy anyone who actually gives a shit. We had a really sad story of people being told that their lives are going to be overwritten by gods that have control over them, and accepting that they are basically a sacrifice, and being like, if you can prove to me that you can fight me, you can maybe fight them. And then this fucker pulls out a Gundam for the final fight, and we're all like, emotional whiplash when we have this fucking Gallo Sengan ass fucking final fight music after like the true ending fucking Asriel fight. Like, What the fuck is this?
Listen, the track Twilight of the Gods from Fire Emblem Echoes is incredibly precious to me.
It is.
And I will only ever use it in the context that I feel is especially important, and one of them is going to be fighting Tiamat.
In a fucking robot.
In a Gundam. Because, fuck it.
What a tale. Maybe one day we should do like a stories of that setting as a little like shorts video.
I would love to. I've legitimately considered. I mean, even for my own posterity's sake, I might just want to at some point actually write down the events of that to make that like a reading, even if it's not even to publish it, but just to have it on hand as like a. I want to remember what this was.
You know what could be fun? Is if you put down an event and ask us all to write our perspectives on it. And none of us talk about like our reflections. We just write how we remember that event. And then compare it of like, this is how you saw that.
Well, that would be really special because this is a thing that particularly fascinates me. D&D being a pen and paper game is a theatre of the mind game. So everyone at that table, regardless of what the DM is describing, is picturing a different landscape. Yeah. A different tone, different emotions and expressions and body language on the characters. They're imagining different colors on everything, like color grading, just because of the way that everyone's kind of visions and mind's eye work. That fucking fascinates me. And then you couple that with the fact that, if we're being realistic, every player at that table is picturing the game from the perspective of their character. They're being relatively focused on what their own characters have done.
You can then argue that individual characters are a reflection of the individual themselves.
Yeah. So everyone at that table is going to be able to piece together, if you combine all their thoughts, a more comprehensive account of their campaign.
Yeah.
Because even the DM isn't going to be able to remember everything, because the DM has to focus on who's talking to them at that time and juggling their perspective on what they're trying to present, you know?
Yeah.
Because this reminds me of particularly of a scene, I kind of want to compare this with you, Angles.
Yeah.
Do you remember, so for context, we had two very different characters. This is Torox and Diod.
Oh yeah, okay.
I want to talk about Torox's sons being born. And the two characters, because I can imagine for you, it was very much I don't know, like Bloodborne-esque soundtrack moment there.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. But for me, I can't picture the music I'd assign to that scene, because it was a mixture of awe, respect, and absolute terror. It'd be like meeting fucking Cthulhu as a Cthulhu cultist.
It was, for context, it was a mortal member of the party who had become imbued with godlike powers and used them to sculpt 4 sons. In various forms of his own image as tainted by godhood.
I mean, it's also probably good to mention that they were demonically inclined to begin with as well.
Yeah, they were completely demonic creations. They were not biologically his children. They were formations of aspects of himself, and this is a paladin barbarian mix.
Yeah, over conquest,
lawful evil,
Minotaur, murder man,
and then follower. Yeah.
And then the weird thing is this guy's like, oh, I need someone to record the events, so I'm going to get this little happy-go-lucky lizard man that I've been adventuring with to come and like write down my child. The thing is the way you describe it to me, it reminded me of the fucking Quake Force purification scene where like the guy's legs get chopped off and shit.
Yeah.
But I was writing it as someone like watching over that, like, this is fucking terrifying, but it's fascinating to write down.
Yeah, it was a case of, get the party bard to write this down, because he was no longer an active player in the party, but he was an active character in the story, like Torox was not the bard. But yeah, Dragon Lake was great, and still waiting on a sequel. Huh?
Wait, I want to organise it, but it's hard.
Okay, music stuff. Talking of music that you listen to when you work, something that I've been listening to lately, especially because I've recently got a bunch of like resistance wires for like doing exercises with. I've been listening to the fucking not the Saints Row, Just Cause 2 Mile High Club music.
Oh,
it's fucking perfect. It's such a cheap loop as well, but it's just like yeah.
I mean, listen, like some people fucking love that stuff. It's like It's like listening to the club music from Mass Effect and being like, it's the kind of music that would not probably.
Yeah. I only recently listened to that because I watched someone play through that game, and I was wow, this I like this. This is good. It's like all the club music from Blade as well,
or Yakuza.
Yeah,
Yakuza has some really good club music. You're just like, oh man, this is like a mini game.
Yeah. Something
I really like about the Yakuza games specifically, but also something I like about games of that sort of style, is I know this is the right term for it. Someone will probably have the right term for it, but this is something I coin for it. Psycho-Diegetic music, in that it's music that the character perceives for the scene.
Oh, so, that's cool.
There's a massive difference between I'm gonna call it Like a Dragon, even though the whole series is now technically Like a Dragon. But Like a Dragon, the Ichiban story about this fucking video gaming nerd who goes to prison for someone else and all that sort of shit. His perspective of music is completely different to Kiryu's perspective of music because of the era they grew up in and the era of experiences they have. Kiryu's stuff is a lot of like strong movies and some of it's like 80s stuff as well. Whereas Ichiban's stuff is more like early 2000s EDM. It's really interesting, like that kind of perspective on the matter. But there was a particular soundtrack in that game where Ichiban goes and raids a Chinese restaurant that's like run by the Chinese mob, and it plays like the most fun. Like you'll have to dig it. I'll find you and send you it. But it plays the most fun interpretation of like kung fu movie music mixed with like EDM stuff. It recontextualizes how the other characters see how like, oh, I'm at fire in the heat bar, and that's like a representation of someone's like drive to fight. Whereas like Ichiban like fights in like turn-based combat because one, he's a masochist, and two, he believes that it's like the heroic thing to let the enemy have a chance to fight back. So he doesn't like beat the shit out of people like the other enemies does. He has this like hero RPG fight mentality, which is why he lets people beat him up while he's fighting them. and like, but then when you look at that in the context of the other characters in the series and how their combat works, each one is incredibly tanky. Like he takes consistently as many blows as he gives, and likely has more HP than the things he's fighting. Whereas I'm finished up 4 right now, and I'm having to like min-max movement speed because a character in a fight has a gun, and there's a bunch of like mooks who are chasing me, and I'm having to like listen out for sound bites so I could dodge being shot during that fight. But it's like, yeah, if this was Like a Dragon, Ichiban would just take the bullets and just be like, I guess I'm going to be shot now. It's part of the fight like process. But then he'd also have an ability that hits like 6 dudes at once, whereas nobody in the previous games has that. But I really like the fact that the music is related to the characters' perspectives of how they perceive the world.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
I'm wondering if there's any other, you in the audience, suggest below, if there's any other games or even settings that have that style of the soundtrack is dependent on the current character.
I guess you could argue that for themes for certain characters, which is maybe not quite the same extent. Because in some cases, on the one hand, you play something like Devil May Cry, and then every character that you play as has a different like theme to how they like Devil Trigger for Nero and that kind of thing. But then on the other hand, second time I've had to mention Persona, goddammit. Like there's a game called Persona Q, which is like a crossover game between the other games and that kind of thing. And generally speaking, there are Persona 3 and Persona 4 versions of the same tracks.
Right.
Which tend to play, I think they play depending on which characters you're playing as, which isn't quite the same as like reflecting the perspective, but it is in terms of theming, and that's interesting to a degree. But I don't know, like I like that idea as it being a creative choice of how the character sees something. I want to see that in more games, and I would love to hear examples from the audience.
I'm fairly certain there are other examples of series that have gone on that have had character changes. When the character changes, the music changes because of how they perceive the world, how they act in the world. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like just ones that aren't just because the theme of the game changes or because the style of the game changes.
Does it happen before with Mass Effect?
I think so.
But that's kind of got to do with more player party, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do they have things? I don't know. Add it to the list. I have not played Mass Effect. So.
No, I think
there is the problem of it being like, there's a very specific line between it being just themes of characters playing when those characters are on screen.
Yeah.
And it being just like, here is the soundtrack for this person's like behavior. Versus what I'm getting at, which is specifically the music in a game being dependent on the main character's perspective of the world, and therefore it being psycho-diegetic in that it's their interpretation of music.
I have a weird feeling that in Black Ops 2, when you play as briefly as a memory saga, as you play vaguely as Mendez, I think, you are hacking people up with a machete whilst running up a mountain, or like, well, no, running up like a hill towards.
Oh, I know the one where you have the fucking full-on cocaine rage.
Yeah, is there not like Spanish guitar playing in the background?
Yeah, I think there
that?
is.
Like, would that count, or is that maybe?
Fuck, I've got one.
Which one?
The Ace Combat music.
Uh-huh.
Zero is entirely a different style of soundtrack to any of the other ones. It has that sort of Spanish guitar kind of thing.
It does, yeah.
You could argue that was because they're fighting fucking Sapin. It's just 2 letters! But could it be because the main character is the demon knight of the round table? And they're doing this sort of like guitar, sort of like heroic knight music?
Maybe.
As opposed to the other ones that are slightly more... Because like, I forget which Ace Combat's like narrative is like AIs. The music is very electronic.
It's probably 7 or 8.
I think it's actually... Yeah, I might.
Actually, did 8 even come out?
No, I think it might be like one of the earlier ones, like 6 or something. No, not 6, that's far as... Okay, my memory of Ace Combat games is pretty terrible, because I only really experienced them recently with emulation. But one of the earlier Ace Combat games has like a future setting where it's like megacorps fighting rather than like countries.
Right.
And the main narrative around that being AI flight systems. I think the plot reveal, spoiler alert, maybe I'm getting it wrong. I think the plot reveal for that game is that the player themselves is a simulation pilot as well. And like you're not even real, you're like a computer basically operating a jet. And like the change of music relating to the change of character. Because the one that comes to mind is there are some levels where you play as a character from another Ace Combat game. In the new Ace Combat, you play as like Mobius, who is like a repeated character. Their music is from the earlier games, and I feel like maybe that is just how they perceive the setting.
Surely this comes up in Cyberpunk.
Probably.
Like, there's got to be something like you go a certain way into either Cyber Psycho or like the.
Oh no, definitely. If you lean into the Silverhand route, it plays his music because it plays Rebel Path more if you lean into Silverhands. Yeah,
that's cool
because that's his theme.
Yeah, but then is that character theme or is that? Yeah, okay.
I do really enjoy the thematics of fucking
yeah.
I really enjoy the parallel of Rebel Path and the Path of the Fool. Being the player character is an idiot and fucking Silverhand is the rebel, and they're not even both tarot cards. One of them is, the other one's just made up.
I wonder how good that DLC is going to be for that game.
I mean, I've seen the trailer for the update, it looks fucking great.
Yeah. I mean, they are going to make another game on it, but this is the piece of DLC. They're like, you know what? Here it is. Have this. We're going to go make a better engine.
Well, the rumour mill is, this is rumours I'm hearing, this game is going to set up the narrative for the new one.
Would make sense.
But I'm not sure if they're going to try and continue V as a character or Silverhand as a character in the vein that they have done with Geralt, having having a correct ending.
Probably not. I would be surprised just because of how the base game can end. I would doubt it.
I think the golden ending for Cyberpunk, spoilers for Cyberpunk, is V goes on a cool spree of heists that may or may not help them get like the legacy they want.
Yeah.
While Silverhand goes off into the internet.
I thought
both of them are alive technically. They could have a continuation where they're both alive.
Isn't she still like gonna die in a year though? Isn't that like the whole thing?
Supposedly.
Yeah. It's such a weird arbitrary thing in one of these games where it's just like the future is this. People can upload their consciousness to X, Y, and Z. Oh, I can't. I'm gonna die.
Well, yeah.
It's like,
I mean, admittedly, the narrative point of that is having Silverhand in your brain has like rewritten your brain to the point we can't even like interpret it anymore. You are suffering from turbo amnesia, not turbo.
Schizophrenia?
No, it's schizophrenia. Fucking, we were talking about earlier when we were talking about Everywhere at the Time. Alzheimer's, yeah. Your brain is going to fucking deteriorate. You're going to die from like spasms and shit in like a month.
It just feels really odd considering you have so much of your own personality that you still play through because it's a game and you need to to have that. But it's just also like, we feel arbitrarily that it's just going to turn out that way. There is another ending where you both end up in the internet and you end up in the internet and you give Johnny your brain.
He decides to fuck off into the wilderness because he doesn't understand the world he lives in.
But then for some reason you can't also upload yourself back from the internet back into it. I don't know.
The reasoning behind that is your body has begun to change to being Johnny at that point.
Yeah.
Ripping Johnny out means you're going to die. Like, it's so used to his psyche being the primary psyche, your brain is going to deteriorate about it.
Yeah.
So you have the option of Johnny leaving and you dying in a year.
Yeah.
Or you leaving and Johnny living on in your body because your brain is now set to being Johnny.
Yeah, but my point is that I don't understand why you then can't be downloaded from the internet into a different body.
Yeah, into another body, which is entirely a possible thing.
Yeah, but they just don't do it.
If I was to write some, if I was going to write some fucking really shitty fan fiction ending, I honestly feel like the golden ending should have been some sort of synthesis between yourself and Johnny, where the new person that is formed is neither of you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, I've managed to find a way of formatting your brain in such a way that like you're not going to die anymore, but neither Johnny Silverhand as individual or V as individual exists anymore. The amalgam of who you have become would be.
Yeah.
That to me would be my perfect ending, but that's because I fucking love narratives about rebirth and new character creation out of the existence of another.
Did you just hear a motorbike?
We are on a motorway!
What? Yeah, but
It was just the one.
I just don't like you talking about Johnny Silverhand and then me hearing that.
Oh yeah, that's the fucking CD Projekt Red assassins are coming to try and like contain the narrative.
Well, possibly.
God, the Cyberpunk music is actually really good.
Yeah.
I'm just remembering it and being like, God, fucking Rebel Path is so
way through again.
It is genuinely wait for the update, but go for it. I'm probably gonna do a playthrough as well.
I'm hoping that it goes on some like Uber discount so I can get it
Probably
on
will
PC.
be. I mean, odds are I'm going to do in the future do a internet historian style the Engoodening of Cyberpunk and just be like, hey, they actually tried. It's not like fucking Witcher 1 where they abandoned it.
Like we talked about in the last episode, we were talking about like game failures and all that, or controversies that people no longer like remember. But No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk are two ones that at launch really, really bad. The launch of Cyberpunk was really fucking bad, and people have forgotten about it because of how quickly it was sorted and how much better it was as a product after fixing it.
I mean, like, people still will look at Cyberpunk and go, "Oh, that's going to be a bit shit, isn't it?" Like now that this update's coming, people are like, maybe it has enough chance.
Yeah,
but like the little patches they added didn't quite do enough to make people go, "It's what was promised."
It was just the stability issues that were the biggest problem for me, and it's just like, I don't know why companies aren't giving... I know it's profit. I know that's why. But as a person who has built games, I don't know why you don't give yourself enough time when you know it's going to be a problem. It's different if you've done QA and think it's going to be fine, release it into the wild, and it becomes a problem. But if you've done the QA, you know it's balked, and then you release it, and it is balked, then
they were getting investors threatening to pull every time they announced a delay. That game needed another 2 years in baking.
It's under 100-year industry. Suits who are in it do not understand how it works.
I mean, Baldur's Gate 3, for example, is going to fuck up like a lot of people because a lot of corporates are going to go, why can't it be like that?
Yep. It's
I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment is like a world war. I have lost so many friends to that game. I haven't seen them since it came out.
It's the invention of the atom bomb. It's just like, well, welcome to the new world after the invention of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
It's completely changed. Like,
I heard that about Elden Ring though. Like Elden Ring is the Ocarina of Time of this decade, and it's like,
fuck.
Yeah, Elden Ring's good.
Honestly, I'd argue Elden Ring at least is the Ocarina of Time of Souls-likes. In that it's like the one able to be like, Elden Ring was the best!
It would not surprise me if Elden Ring becomes everyone's favourite. I'm playing it now, and it is... Initially, I was like, what does being an open world add to this genre?
Hot Wolfman.
It took me a while to come around, but now that I've seen the light and I've seen I've only gotten I'm not very far into the game at all, but it's sold me already. Very, very good game. Music for it hasn't caught me yet though. It's good, but I'm still thinking of individual tracks from DS3 and Bloodborne before, and even Dark Souls 1 before I'm thinking about Elden Ring. But again, not very far into the game.
I mean, speaking of music and from games that don't hang with you, I've been recently replaying Mankind Divided because I hate myself, and realizing, man, this makes me really miss the Human Revolution soundtrack. I listen to that, and immediately my brain goes, this makes me really miss the Deus Ex 1 soundtrack. Like, nothing's going to top that. For that series, that was the best the soundtrack got. There's some fucking great tracks in there. Just like the fact that they included a combat track for every single environment.
Yeah.
Even ones where like you're in an environment where there's no enemies. Just because they need players who like throw basketballs at fucking UNATCO soldiers enough so they actually start shooting you. Like, the adding of the combat music there is like, this is great. Well done.
Speaking of that, and remembering Thunder talking about jobs again, I know this is the perpetual episode. It will not end.
We'll don't worry, we'll split it into like 2 or some shit.
I am.
Yeah, at this point. But another one I just remembered is Vampire the Masquerade, because we were talking about that earlier, but Bloodlines has such a good set of ambient tracks to it.
Oh yeah, that's some good music.
The downtown theme is so good, but the one that really sticks with me is the Hollywood soundtrack, because it is so morose in a very modern kind of way, and it's I would walk back home from various awful jobs I have had in my life at night or in the very early hours of the morning, watching the sun come up. And it fits perfectly. It's exactly it. The Santa Monica stuff is a little bit too miserable, but the downtown.
I mean, Santa Monica is a shithole in that setting, so it has to be.
But the Hollywood is also a shithole, but yet that has a dreamy kind of spirituality to it, but it has a weird, hopeful twinge to it of this art lost and all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate.
I forget which clan holds Hollywood's. It's the not Ventru.
Well, Nosferatu.
Nosferatu hold the sewers.
Yeah,
but there's another group that hold the.
It's the Ventru.
I don't think it is Ventru, because those are like
Toreador. Maybe
Toreador. The thing is, I really like how the two of them are accepting that their turf is slightly different. But like, if you play that game, they have like a really interesting dialogue of just like, can you go check up on the Nosferatu? I haven't heard from them in a while. And it's like, my neighbours are missing. Can you make sure they're okay? Everywhere else is like, those fuckers are in my turf. I own this part of turf. Whereas the Hollywood guys are like, as long as no one moves into Hollywood, I don't mind the Nosferatus in the sewers because it keeps out the enemies. Like, and the Nosferatu is like, the guys above us don't like push us out, so I guess we own the Hollywood sewers. And it's that level of like weird respect between the most human of the vampires and the least human of the vampires, just being like, and it, to me, because it's Hollywood, it really reflects the two-faced nature of Hollywood as a place.
Yeah.
The glitz and glamour versus the literal slums that are in that town.
The ugliness.
It's beautiful as a reflection of that concept, and the music for both those settings fit that perfectly.
Thank you for coming to Dr. White's TED Talk. In the next episode, we're going to try and bully Thunder into actually playing the damn game.
Yeah, I was actually going to say on the subject of listening to songs and then fitting certain themes while like taking walks and things.
Yeah.
For one, it's that there are several times when walking through a rainy night with a Halo 3 ODST theme the soundtrack to that game just starts playing on my phone, and I'm like, I wonder why this has happened, but the jazz is on now. But the other one is that one of the tracks in Off, Desperately Safe, is surprisingly fitting for almost any context that I start playing it in. It is a beautifully calm track that reflects a kind of emptiness that I find when, like...
It's not... My brain is telling me that's the one that plays during the meet. What's the name of the little birds you ride?
No, it's not that one.
Right.
Desperately Safe plays in Zone 2 when you are outside of the libraries. And you are...
yes, I know the one.
Yeah, it's just a very, very calm track that I think speaks to a kind of a comfort in bleakness. It's the sound of an empty town. It's the sound of...
I mean, it's perfectly fitting for the scene it's in, though.
Yeah, it's the sound of a summer's day. It's the sound to a winter sunset. It's the sound to so many things, in my opinion. Like, it's almost... I wouldn't call it the perfect piece of music, because I think that's giving a few synthesized notes a bit too much credit.
Yeah.
But it's damn fine as a fucking track, and like Off soundtrack is fucking brilliant. Pepper Steak is beautiful as like a battle theme.
But everyone cites Pepper Steak. It's such a like
because Pepper Steak is what if one of those dumb Silent Hill pipe clanging tracks was actually fucking groovy, and it really is. It's so damn good. But
I would say, because now I know the track, Desperately Safe to me is the soundtrack of August 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It's the height of a summer you know is ending.
Oh, I would make it that's the thing. I would make it the sounds to September 1st, to the very end of the summer holiday, like before you go to school or something like that. But
well, that's the thing, is I feel like it's got more of like, I have a whole month of this ahead of me, but it's going to be over in a month.
Ah, okay.
Rather than it being the beginning of the end, it is the end of the beginning.
I see. That makes sense. Okay, well, that's
Arty-farty university student talk!
Yeah, but it's beautiful that music can inspire so many interpretations, though. That's the fun thing about doing this sort of thing and having this as a topic.
So, I'm gonna cite some soundtracks here, because I actually want to point out something that it's one I both simultaneously am glad I experienced and live it exists, and I'm sad that I had to go through it.
Yeah.
There was a RPG made about the Columbine massacre.
Right.
It's an incredibly dark but incredibly passionate exploration of two very hurt people hurting a lot more people. The music for that game is MIDI renditions of stuff from like Marilyn Manson, Smashing Pumpkins, a lot of stuff that these two kids would have listened to at the time, but they're fantastic MIDI renditions. And honestly, some of them are better than the actual tracks they're based on. For example, I think it's The End is the Beginning, so I just remember that I was saying a second ago. The MIDI rendition of that from that game's soundtrack is better than the actual song. The actual song is like a weird punk rock soundtrack for the Batman Begins movie or something like that, or one of the Batman movies. It was weird. It was a weird like the MIDI rendition of that has such a darker tone, and such a more tragic and impressive emotional tone. And I hate the fact that it's such a really powerful piece of music, but to look it up, I have to look up a video game simulation of a school shooting. That is...
Bit rough.
And there are soundtracks to things that I find really enjoyable, and really, like, I really like this sound. Like, some degrees, I would argue Silent Hill as well. The concepts and themes of Silent Hill are incredibly dark.
Oh,
and to say Silent Hill's soundtrack is my favourite is like, are you depressed?
Yeah, it's like, what's your favourite track from Silent Hill 2? It's probably the one where that woman is contemplating suicide and she talks about her sexual abuse.
My favourite one is when a woman stands on a staircase complaining about how her life is miserable and there's always fire.
Yeah.
It's just like, fucking hell, it's really dark.
Yeah.
But to be able to say, like, the music there is incredibly powerful, and enjoyable is probably the wrong terms to use. I put quotation marks around that. But an experience that I would say, hey, it should be done. But don't experience the thing it comes from unless you are aware of what you're getting into. Like, again, Old Boy, fantastic movie from a filmmaker's perspective, and like cinematography and sequences. That corridor fight scene, single shot, fucking fantastic. That plot of that movie makes me never want to share it with people. Because of just the concepts in it and the narrative itself. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it's currently doing a cinema re-release.
Okay.
But it's fucked.
Yeah.
It genuinely is. I'm using curse words here as a strong point here. It's not something I would recommend someone watches.
No. Fair enough then. That's the thing, there's a lot of stuff where it's very hard to recommend going through it. That sort of thing, whether it be because they are, like, you know, physically painful, that kinds of things. Like, the movie Thread seems absolutely fascinating, but incredibly fucking hard to recommend.
I would like to watch that, but yeah, that is on the list of, like, films that are fucked that I do want to see. Threads is one. Oh my god. What's the other one called? What's it called? It's about a boy who joins the resistance.
Is it about the Warsaw Uprising?
No, I don't think so.
So there's a couple of...
Christ.
There is a soundtrack to a game I can't find. I can find the game. I've got the game on Steam. It's fantastic. It's a game called Warsaw. It's about the Warsaw Uprising. Its soundtrack is the most hauntingly beautiful piece of we fight because what we must. you know the Warsaw Uprising did not go well for the people involved. But it is a hauntingly fantastic experience. I would highly recommend anyone pick up that game. Mostly because the devs deserve it, but also because it is a beautiful experience to be traumatized by. Like, none of the characters have good endings. Every player character in that game you get can die. That is just part of how that game flows. If they don't, their epilogues are the most depressing shit. But the music in that game is hauntingly beautiful. I think in some cases they even like use samples of radio music that was played by the Warsaw Council. They started playing on the radio when they were announcing the uprising and announcing like resistance movement stuff.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful experience that I highly recommend anyone who wants to feel the emotion of a fight that you know you'll lose, but you must fight. And I mean, admittedly, we only know we'd lose it because we have the historical perspective. But at the time, even then, they were, you know... I remember in history class seeing a photo of the girl holding a letter and a PPSH Russian submachine gun in one arm.
Yeah.
A letter in her other, slumped in the doorway, dead. And the letter is an apology to her mum.
Fuck.
And I remember seeing that as a GCSE history and being like, the Second World War was an atrocity of unimaginable human scale, and the fact that we weren't able to help these people in their attempts to resist enough makes me ashamed of our country. Even though we did, we shipped them supplies, we flew in things, we should have been there.
Yeah.
We should have helped them.
The film I was thinking of was Come and See.
That rings a bell.
I'll show you a thumbnail for the YouTube video that reminded me it existed.
Show me the oracle.
That. If you've seen that person's face.
Fuck.
Yes, you know the one I'm talking about now. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it is the most, like, it's been renowned as, like, one of the best war films because it's the most accurate to how horrifying and awful the war is. But that's another one I want to see on the really harrowing list. Jinro is also on there.
Yeah.
That's another one. And I've already seen Silence. I love Silence. It's such a good film. It's a Scorsese film about the Jesuit missionaries going to Japan and trying to convert the Japanese and it not going very well.
Mm-hmm.
That is a film that's title I didn't get for a really, really long time because it was like, Silence, Silence of God, maybe. There is no soundtrack.
Ah.
Interesting.
I didn't notice.
Oh,
which was more impressive to me.
How much the film pulled you in.
Yeah, there is no music to it. There's none at all. And you don't notice it. You will now because I've said it.
Yeah,
but genuinely, that film is so good. And I always sell it to people by explaining it in the worst way possible because I don't remember actors' names very well, but I remember the roles they play. So you may have heard about it. It's about Spider-Man and Kylo Ren going to find Qui-Gon Jinn, who has given up God in Japan.
Sorry, I blinked for a second. Are you describing like those fucking Elsagate videos at this point?
He's describing the most recent season of Fortnite.
So that showing me that reminded me of a film I saw ages ago called Waltz in Bashir. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
Right.
It's a rotoscope / animated movie about a man who has horrible nightmares of his involvement in a war. Like, he was involved in essentially an atrocity, and it's been years since then. He has horrible nightmares about it, and he wants to go and discover what happened, because he can't remember his involvement.
Right.
He goes and chases down all of his old war buddies, and he goes across the country to go talk to them. And that is a beautiful, haunting film that I would also highly recommend. Its soundtrack is great, but one of the scenes has he interprets a guy dodging sniper fire or machine gun fire as waltzing in the street. So he's like dancing really smoothly up this road, and he's watching it with like music playing, and it's another psycho-diegetic music sequence where he's listening. He's like, at least I remember it being this. It's been ages since I've seen it, but he's watching this guy dancing. There is just like little puffs around him as bullets are landing around this guy as he's dodging being fired at by like a machine gun in a building across the way.
Yeah.
And it is a beautiful movie, and I highly recommend it. If you're not a video game type and you don't like Warsaw, watch that movie instead. It's also really good.
Media is good.
Consume the media.
I think we talked about a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, we've been quite lucky. The red light hasn't faded out over our rambling discussions of the things we love and experienced.
It hasn't, but I do worry about what it's connected to.
Yeah, if we're in movement, where the hell is the power coming from?
Yeah.
Does one of us want to go and check that?
I guess.
All right, cool.
I mean, you've been electrocuted enough. You're probably resistant to it.
I think I have a look at an ambient glow as well.
Yeah.
Okay, off we go.
All right. Find anything in there? Where did he go?
Oh shit!
What happened? What happened? Where are you?
Where's
What? White? White? Angles, what the fuck happened to White?
Maybe Todd got to him?
I don't want to check.